Hello and welcome to the Dyno Six-Pack Dynasty Football Podcast. Very busy time of the year for all of us. Hopefully you're still alive and getting ready to prepare for the semifinals and your fantasy playoffs next weekend. But when you're a dynasty degenerate like I am, and I know a few other people do because I'm in another mock draft right now, it's never too early to start looking forward to the next season. So I got my guy Keith on here with me today, and we're going to do a little bit of a 2024 Dynasty Startup Mock Draft. No rookies will be included in this one. We're just going to be doing veteran players only here. We're going to try and get through 3 or 4 rounds today and then maybe come back next week and finish it up. But before we do that, of course, head on over to fantasy6pack.net/plans, become a member over there. Even though football season is winding down, we still have tons of stuff coming up for fantasy basketball and fantasy baseball. So the season definitely doesn't end over at Fantasy Six Pack when football season ends. You'll get access to the Discord. So, once we're done with your football season, you just pop on over to that fantasy baseball and fantasy basketball Discord, and you can get help from all of our analysts there as well too. So yeah, make sure you do that, like, subscribe. And then before we get started on this, Keith, man, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Trying to get finished with Christmas shopping and doing some research for week 16 on DFS and trying to do as little actual work as possible.
Right, exactly. The priority is this time of year. Definitely.
That's right.
Like work is kind of like everything work related is a January problem at this point.
That's right.
That's how I'm seeing it anyways. So since we are going to go ahead and skip the rookies in our mock draft today, Keith had a couple of thoughts he wanted to get off on a couple of these rookies before we get started here. And I know one of them was Brock Bowers, and I know you're a big fan of him. So just kind of tell me what you're looking at with him as we're a couple months away from draft season.
Well, just want to give full disclosure. I am a UGA fan, huge fan, but because of that, I've seen every single game. I'm not one of these people that just automatically loves all Georgia players. Like James Cook was somebody who I was very high on for a long time. I was eating crow on that. I think we've seen recently why I thought that him going to Buffalo was just a perfect situation for a player of his skill set. But I think Bowers, people have no idea what is about to get unleashed on the NFL. And I keep kind of comparing him to if Travis Kelce and Gronk had a baby. That's basically what Brock Bowers would be, because he is a legit 3-down tight end. He's an unbelievable blocker. So what I like about him is he'll both be able to line up in line, help run game. So whatever team he goes to, that he's going to immediately be like adding a 6 offensive lineman to the line. But he's also just an unbelievable route runner. He catches everything, and nobody wants to tackle the dude once he gets it in space. I mean, it's just amazing to watch in the SEC, where there's tons of future NFL players. How many guys try to tackle him from the waist up, and it's like, forget about it. I mean, he literally just dusts them off and keeps going. And, he's been injured, obviously, this year. I was surprised kind of that he rushed back. I appreciate, his desire to win and try to win a title, even though it didn't work out. But when he's been healthy, I mean, as a freshman, he was arguably the best player in the national championship game as a freshman, which is just insane. Was obviously a huge part last year. And depending, obviously, where he goes, because so much of this has to do with that. But like I've seen mocks recently where if he goes to the Chargers with Justin Herbert, oh my God, like the sky is the limit for somebody like him, because again, unbelievable after the catch. He's a good down the field receiver. He's got great hands. He's so good at making contested catches. And I just think people are sleeping on him. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a phenomenal talent. Don't get me wrong. But with these receivers, I think it's a little bit more dependent on how good their QB is, to where with tight ends, it's
the safety blanket.
Yeah, it's not as big of a deal. So I think that pretty much no matter where he goes, if you're having, say, a draft before we know where these guys are going to end up going, I would actually have Bowers over Harrison. And then depending on what Harrison, ends up with, obviously I would take Harrison if he gets in a great situation. But I think there's also a good chance he's going to end up either with, a rookie QB or somebody who is, not at the top of their game, to where I don't think it really matters where Bowers goes. And I just honestly cannot wait to see him at the next level, because we saw this with Jalen Carter. We've seen this with a lot of guys over the years. Georgia doesn't necessarily try to make stars, right? Like, that's not what their team is about. They're going to, all have roles to play. And we haven't really seen a Brock Bowers with a 20+% target share with a consistency. And I think he's going to get that in the NFL. And I look at like what Laporta has done this year.
I was going to ask you, how do you compare to what Laporta has done?
Like, no disrespect to Laporta, but he's a better athlete. He's stronger. He's a better blocker. Like, I mean, I think that he's like Laporta, I think is his floor. I really do.
So, wow. Okay. So Laporta, like for the last couple of weeks now, he's been my number one tight end in my dynasty rankings.
And rightfully so. Like,
and so you think that like day one, he kind of comes in and challenges that?
Yes, absolutely. I just, again, if you have not watched him on a, game to game basis, it's just, tight end's not sexy, right? Like, but it's just how the Auburn game was a prime example this year, right? Like, we struggled with him the entire game. And then it was like the last two drives, they were like, screw it, we're just going to Bowers. And he had 6 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown. And he just completely took over that game, and we ended up winning. And again, people are going to think back to his last couple of games. He was rushing back from a major injury. So, he did not look great, but that was because he was basically playing on one leg.
He'll be healthy.
One ankle. Absolutely. And it wasn't a serious injury to where I don't, it's not like a torn ACL or anything. Again, like Jalen Carter is the best Georgia player I've seen in the last decade by a pretty wide margin. Brock Bowers is the offensive version of that. Like, it's not even close. I'm so excited. Like, more excited than I was when Todd Gurley came in the NFL and we saw what Todd did in his first 4 or 5 seasons.
Oh man, I love that. So like little peek behind the curtain, like my kind of process for when I start to get my incoming rookies ranked is the very first time I go through, I'm basically just kind of coming on, pulling up like the all 22s and some highlight tape from just basically everybody, just kind of watching a few games. And I'm not trying to make any like broad conclusions or take any big judgment calls. I'm just kind of trying to get familiar with everybody's game so I can kind of marinate thought in a little bit. So then when I kind of dig back in here in a few weeks and I'm starting to look at it a lot closer, get a little bit more nitpicky. But the one thing that I don't think it's crazy. When I did my first kind of watch through Brock Bowers, and of course I saw him quite a bit. I do like Georgia as well for college. They're not my favorite team, but I do root for them basically since the Stafford days. And it's just, and he's, I think in a tight end premium league, like he's firmly in the top 4. I think presuming like
his highest target share. Premium. I'm sorry, I was just looking this up, JJ, because I wanted to go through this and I forgot. His highest target share all 3 years was 20%. So again, like to my point, he was doing all this without, seeing a huge, chunk of the pie. In his time in college football, first in career PFF receiving grade, 94.3, first in career receiving yards, first in receiving yards after the catch, first in forced missed tackles, tied for first in receiving touchdowns. He runs a 4.48 40. And again, he is so strong. He's going to be like, it really is. To me, it's like if you took Gronk as like what he was and just made him a little bit faster, that is Brock Bowers. He's a better route runner than Gronk too, because he's so good at these subtle head fakes. Wow. And I cannot wait to see this guy at the next level. I've been saying it since his freshman year. I mean, again, he was a freshman at a position that's very physical. I mean, tight end is one of those positions. Usually you don't see freshmen have an impact because you kind of got to get your man strength, right? And kids coming out of high school normally don't have that. He, from day one, was the starting tight end at Georgia. They won back-to-back national titles. He was a huge part of that both years. And to be honest, I think him being limited is the main reason that we did not defeat Alabama. Like, I think if we had 100% Brock Bowers, we win that game because he is so much the engine of that offense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I mean, it's crazy like how quick the tight end position has shifted from like you either want the first one or you want to be the last to draft a tight end because there's like 2 good ones. So now it's like there's so many good ones. It's like you might as well wait and just, if you're not going to literally grab your top guy, just grab whoever's there still at 9 or 10 because it's getting deep. It's definitely like you can see why, like just with the way the NFL offensive has transitioned to more of like a pass friendly just in general, and more. And so even like recent years getting the tight end even more so involved in that, like pretty much every team at this point. So yeah,
it's harder to cover too, right? Like a lot of teams have a shutdown corner,
especially these like big fast guys too.
Exactly, like because they're too. Exactly, they're too big for safeties and they're too fast for linebackers, unless you're Fred Warner. But I mean, it's just they're this huge mismatch. You look at like what Trey McBride, and again, like no offense to these guys, I have no doubt Brock Bowers is a much better talent than they are. And I cannot wait to see him get unleashed on the NFL.
Yeah, man. I'm excited for this year's draft class a lot.
It's
super flex leagues, especially when we're talking about loaded classes for super flex leagues, quarterback position is looking very healthy this year. I know you kind of had some thoughts on those coming in here. So what's on your mind talking about these rookie quarterbacks here?
First off, I can't believe people are saying that Caleb Williams may not be the number one pick. I understand Drake May is a very good prospect. He really is. But how many quarterbacks have we heard compared to Patrick Mahomes since Patrick Mahomes? Zero. If he's 85, 90% of Patrick Mahomes, that's unbelievable. I think back to Trae Young, right? Who was kind of the first guy compared to Steph Curry. He has not been Steph Curry, but he's a really good player who's all pro, right? Because he has a lot of those same skills. And I think of that with Caleb Williams. I think Drake May is a great prospect, but Daniels is the one that I don't know, because it's hard to tell with, the offense he was in, just kind of what LSU was. But if we're talking about from a talent perspective, I mean, dude reminds me a lot of Lamar in a lot of ways. And I actually think he's a better passer of the ball than Lamar was coming into the NFL. And he's the guy I'm really excited about. As an Atlanta Falcons fan, that would be a dream for me to get him. And I just don't think we're going to be able to, because there's too many teams that need QBs. I think that those three guys are going to go in the top 6, 7 picks for sure. And then there's a considerable drop off because I'm high on Penix, but what scares me is the injury history, right? For fantasy, why not take a shot? Because he could be great if he can stay healthy. But if I was a GM, I would be terrified of his extensive injury history to where, he blows out his knee again. Who knows if he recovers?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I am. It would take a lot to change my mind on this point to move Caleb Williams out of the number one spot for me. Lamar is a good comp. I feel like the way that he extends, because he's not a traditional runner scrambler, but he's very good at moving within the pocket and extending it. And it reminds me of Lamar, and not early career Lamar, Lamar now, kind of how he operates in the pocket.
Which was Lamar in college. He's in a lot of ways.
He's moving at 80% speed, but he's just so smart and knows how to manipulate defenders. So I think that's a good comp, the way that he extends plays. And I do. I think the arm talent's right on par, if not better than where Lamar was at, especially coming in as a rookie. So, yeah, Caleb Williams, Drake May. You mentioned Penix, Bonix, JJ McCarthy. Yeah, there's a lot of good guys coming in here. But let's get to what everybody is joining in here for, and that is going to be for our mock draft here. So let's get this popped up on screen here. We are going old school with the Google Sheets, and we did a coin toss before, and so Keith is going to be drafting all of the odd number teams, and I will be taking care of all the even numbers teams. We got 12 teams on here. We're going to try and get through. We're going to aim for 4 rounds. Worst case, if we run a little bit long, we'll stop after 3 and then come back next week. But go ahead and kick us off. 101 for the 2024 startup draft. Who are you taking?
Kind of like what I was saying with Caleb Williams. I'm not going to overthink it. I want Justin Jefferson. He's the best receiver in football. He kind of reminded us this past weekend that it doesn't even really matter who his QB is. He's still a terrifying guy. And this was a Jefferson who was banged up, right? This was not healthy Justin Jefferson, and he still looked great with, their third string quarterback. You got to assume Cousins is coming back. Jefferson, I know, said earlier this year that part of him staying and signing on with Minnesota long-term is he wants Cousins back. And when he has Kirk Cousins, that's pretty much a guarantee of 110 plus receptions, 1,400 yards, and 10 plus touchdowns. And he's still 24 years old. So I love Jamar Chase, but I got to go Justin Jefferson.
Going Jefferson here. In a super flex league, are you still taking him one over the quarterbacks up at the top there?
So it is a super flex league.
We can go either way on that one. Doesn't matter.
Okay. I wouldn't worry. If it's a super flex league, I probably would take a QB, obviously, just because. They're so important, but
let's go non-super flex. I think it's when we go super flex, the first 3 rounds are mostly just going to be quarterbacks. So yeah, let's go non-super flex for this one. Okay. All right, so I got the second pick here, and this one, man, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to be called a homer on this one, but I feel like the production for 2 straight years has kind of said this, but I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb over Jamar Chase as my number 2 wide receiver moving into next year. It's nothing to do with Chase. He's a little bit more of a boom bust player. It seems like the boom weeks are bigger than what CeeDee Lamb does, but I would rather have a wide receiver that every week is putting up 20 to 25 versus that receiver that's, 40, 30, 10. And there's a lot of other people that like to chase that high upside. So I'm not going to say it's the wrong way to build it, but for me, especially when we're talking this early in the draft, I want someone that I'm feeling good as returning top 5 value at their position. So I'm going to take CeeDee Lamb here, number 2.
Yeah, he's the unquestioned number 1 target in his offense. I will go ahead and take Jamar Chase third. What I like about Chase is the upside of potentially T. Higgins not being on this team next year and what that could unlock for Chase, because he's had a big target rate, obviously his first couple of years, but I just think it's going to open his route tree a lot more because he's going to kind of be doing both the T. Higgins and Jamar Chase role. And you can see a 5-10%, bump in his target rate. And right now it looks like T. Higgins is not going to be back in Cincinnati. They had a chance to sign him. They didn't. Higgins sounds a little frosty about the fact that they didn't, go ahead and sign him. If you watch the game Saturday, you understand that maybe they should be trying to sign Higgins, because I think T. Higgins on a lot of teams would be, like one of these top 4 or 5 receivers. Like, he's a beast who is just, unfortunately for him, happens to be on a team with one of the top 3 receivers in football. But Jamar Chase, Burrow, I'm not really worried about. I think he's going to come back and look good. But, it's definitely hurt Chase's value with Browning, which, to your point, I think is, another reason just to kind of look at Lamb, who doesn't have to deal, with sharing as many targets. And the number one thing I'll say about Dak is he's durable, man. He's there week in and week out. And that's really good for CeeDee Lamb. So I totally understand you taking him over Chase.
Yeah, I think Chase is the no-brainer number 3. I think that these guys right here are kind of my unquestioned top 3 going into next year. Coming in at number 4, and honestly not too far behind these guys for me, is going to be A.J. Brown. We've seen this year that even with the guy as talented as Devonta Smith there across from him, like he is the alpha in that offense. He just demands the targets. He is the number 1 offense there. So give me A.J. Brown here. I don't see any reason that changes going into next year. I think these 4 right here are the pretty clear top 4 receivers for dynasty leagues. And then this is a point where I think when you're looking at rookies too, that kind of Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of starts to enter the picture with kind of the next few guys right here. But yeah, these 4, I feel like these should be the top 4 picks in every dynasty draft that's non-superflex, like pretty easily next year.
Yeah. The other guy, though, that I would include, and I'm going to take him 5th, is the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who just, I mean, you want to talk about Mr. Consistency. Like, I had him in basically every league this year. And not only is he one of the, top 12, 13 scorers, what I love about him is, to your point, it's like 15 to 20 points every single week, which that's so big when you're trying to win games in fantasy football, kind of knowing, all right, I'm going to get 15, 20 points from anybody on your roster is huge. I mean, obviously, if you have a solid QB, you hope to get that every week. But outside of that, it's really rare to see somebody just week after week after week. And like we've seen a little bit of the emergence of Jamison Williams. We've seen, 2 backs come in. We've seen the emergence of Laporta. And guess what? St. Brown is still a huge part of this offense. He still gets by far the biggest target rate. He still gets a ton of receptions each year. And I liked the steadiness of him. And I think, if you're looking at a dynasty team, you have a guy that's 24 years old. I'm assuming that they're going to re-sign Goff. I think they kind of have to. And, you have a quarterback's number 1 receiver who's 24 and is just going to get peppered with targets. And, you're going to get that 15 to 20 points every week. And then you can kind of maybe go for more upside plays in later rounds.
Yeah, for what it is worth, as it sits now, Amon-Ra is my wide receiver 5 in my dynasty rank. So this would be where I would probably go with this pick. I think at this point you kind of have a couple of the running backs that start to kind of maybe enter the mix. Your boy Bijan down in Atlanta. He's definitely in the mix here. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I think Christian McCaffrey may just be one of those running backs that is productive until the day he hangs it up. Looking at him being age 27, that does scare me a little bit. Tyreek Hill, obviously, arguably the best NFL receiver right now, but that age plus him already talking about retirement a little bit, that scares me here. So at this point, this is where I kind of start to vary it a little bit. I'm okay taking a little bit more risk once we're kind of past the sure things. So I'm going to bet on talent outlasting the coach, and I'm going to take Bijan Robinson here at number 6. He's one of the few running backs in Dynasty that I'm okay building around if you're a rebuilding team. Most of the times, if I say you're rebuilding, I'll say get rid of those running backs, go get some high picks and receivers. There's like about 4 of them that I think are the exception, and he leads that group for me. So we're going to go Bijan Robinson and just pray on Arthur Smith's downfall this offseason.
I think that hopefully that is the one benefit of our collapse on Sunday is that the case for him is getting harder and harder to stay, thank God. I hope they get rid of him. We were talking about, off air before we came on. I'm hoping they try to go get Justin Fields. I think they can get him for like a second rounder. And man, could you imagine Bijan and Fields and a run option offense? Like it could seriously just unleash Bijan. And it's been kind of a disappointment this year. I don't really think it's Bijan's fault. He's shown flashes of the talent that he is. And even despite not getting a ton of touches, he's still, I believe, a top 10 running back this year. So I went back and forth for this next pick, but he's still only 27. He's in a Shanahan offense. Give me CMC. Like I can't let him go by knowing I have at least a few more years with him. And you have arguably the number 1 fantasy weapon in football. And if I'm the 7th pick and I didn't get any of those top wide receivers, I feel really good about that. And worst case, say that this year doesn't go well for you, you have a huge trading chip for teams that are fighting for a championship to get future draft capital. So I'm going to go ahead and take CMC there.
Yeah, I can't knock that pick at all. Like I said, he was probably the other guy at running back I was considering, which is funny because I feel like in a draft, if that was me in that spot, I end up going with Christian McCaffrey. That pretty much automatically shifts my draft to where I'm trying to win now at this point. Whereas I like Bijan that he's still young enough that you can kind of go a little bit more on the younger side and the timelines still match up. But yeah, I mean, when you're talking about players that can win you a league right now and 2 years down the road, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, I don't see any reason he's not going to be in there. Contract, he's locked up with San Francisco, great system. Don't see like any scenario that's realistic that involves Kyle Shanahan being out of there. So yeah, I think that's a pretty solid pick right there. Kicking over to 8 here. This is where it starts to get a little bit tougher for me here. But I think I'm going to go with a little bit of youth here. We saw what happened last week without Tyreek. I think that he's had a bit of a rough year, so he's been slept on a little bit. People are down on him quite a bit, and that is going to be Jalen Waddle. I'm going to take him number 8 here. Similar to Bijan, you could go out and you could get like the guys that are a little bit older, the Tyreeks and the Diggs, but building with Waddle gives you a good chance to have a player that's going to win now, but you can also build a little bit of youth around him, and the timelines are still going to match up, which I like having that flexibility early in dynasty drafts. So number 8, we will go Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I like that. I actually was going back and forth with this pick between 2 guys on the exact same team who I think people are sleeping on for next year. Where no matter what you think of Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be a huge upgrade for both Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. But I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson here because we've seen the production that he's already had with just the worst set of QBs imaginable. And one of the biggest disappointments to me in this fantasy football season was not getting to see Garrett Wilson with a good QB because, he let me down this week in DFS and it kept me from having a huge day for a second week in a row. But I mean, if you look at it, he's putting up consistent points with Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle. And when he gets Aaron Rodgers back next year, it would not surprise me at all if he's right there with Jefferson and those guys. It's the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL in fantasy.
Yeah, I like that pick here. I do like that you took Wilson here. So pretty much since they came into the draft, I've been Olave over Garrett Wilson. I'm still feeling that way at this point. So I'm very happy to get him here at number 10. This is kind of one of the first picks I think I've had since Bijan where I was like, okay, yeah, I know exactly who I'm taking as soon as I came up here. Don't really love Derek Carr, but I mean, we've still seen the flashes when they're on the field together. Chris Olave is quarterback proof. Had a little bit of issues this year with staying healthy, so I think that's going to present a buy low opportunity in this offseason. He's firmly wide receiver one that you can build around in Dynasty. Give me Chris Olave, number 10.
All right, with the 11th pick, I'm going to do very similar to my thought process with CMC, and I'm going to go ahead and take Tyreek Hill, and it's going to make me competitive right off the bat. And worst case, if things don't go my way, again, he is the kind of guy that could get a huge draft haul in the future for a team wanting to win the championship, say this year or next year. And I just think, again, his production is so much more than any of the other guys in this range that we know Tua is going to be there. We know McDaniels is not going anywhere. And as long as Tyreek stays healthy, I also think Tyreek's one of those guys that, it could be 3-4 years before he really loses his speed. He understands that's what it's about. I've read several articles that he's kind of like LeBron. He treats his body and, his preparation and stuff very seriously. Like he understands that his speed is what makes him elite. And I'm happy to get him at, kind of the end of the first round. And that's either a win now or potentially build for the future chip later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is kind of end of the first. This is where I feel like I'm a little bit more okay being aggressive, going a little bit older, just because the older guys are going to slide in most dynasty draft anyways. And so if you're at the end of them, you might as well sit back there and just enjoy picking off those values there. And so number 12 here, this is fun, kind of getting to go back to back here. And I don't know if I mentioned up at the top, the player pool you guys are seeing over here to the left side, those are from Dynasty League Football's December ADP. So after you become members of us at Fantasy Six Pack, if you play Dynasty Football, I'd recommend grabbing one for them too. They have a lot of awesome cool content, a lot of tools there. Like this ADP tool I mentioned on our last show on how to rebuild a team. One of the things I like to do in the offseason is I go back and look at the ADP from 3, 6, and 12 months ago and try to look at the guys that have had huge shifts in value. And then like, okay, is there some sort of value that I can buy between this big correction, or there's some sort of thing I can sell based off this overreaction? So yeah, well worth your money over there as well too. So yeah, shout out to Dynasty League Football. They do a lot of good work over there. But getting back to the draft here, number 12 here. So this one may come as a little bit of a shock here. It feels like he's been in the league for a long time. He's only 24 years old still. We didn't really get to see it this year, but I'm very excited for what this offense looks like when both of these guys are on the field. So at 12, we're going to go JT here. Yep.
Nice call.
Really excited to see him come back here at the full year of Anthony Richardson. Yep. We saw what happened in the games he did play this year. He was getting into form. He was starting to get in the end zone every single week, just fluke injury with his thumb. The good news is they have not been repetitive injuries to the same spot, so it seems like it's been kind of freak stuff. So I feel pretty good about him getting it back together. But since, we did go a little bit more of a risky pick here, just in terms of, the injury history, I'm going to kind of try and offset myself a little bit here with this next pick. We're going to go young, and we're going to double tap the running back position here, and we're going to go Jamar Gibbs. We've seen the role expand here in the second half, like how we all talked about early in the season. I feel like that insulates me a little bit on the off chance that JT has a tough time staying healthy again. And you have two of the best running backs in the game that are both under age 25 going into next season. So yeah, at 12, we'll double tap Jonathan Taylor, Jamar Gibbs. So just a quick recap. Round one, we had Justin Jefferson, followed by CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then we had a little bit of a running back push with Bijan Robinson and CMC. Then we rounded out with Jalen Waddle, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Tyreek Hill, and Jonathan Taylor.
All right, I may be making a surprising or bad pick, but I look at it that we've seen how valuable Travis Kelce has been for all these years. And you have Sam Laporta come in and immediately make this impact at a position that is very difficult to do so. He's going to be on an offense that I think is going to be very good for years to come with the young skilled players that they have. And I love the advantage, just like with what Kelce has. My wife actually has Laporta in the ESPN Northwest Florida League. And every week she wins that, that head-to-head matchup. And I know that it's, not apples to apples, but it just feels good when, every week I'm going to gain 5 to 10 points at one position over my opponent. And I think, again, with this being his first year, remember, most tight ends, like look at Njoku and those guys, it takes them a while to get going. So for Laporta to have this kind of impact, and he almost seems to be getting better as the season goes on. When you look at his last couple of games, I just think he's got a huge ceiling, and he's just going to be a very consistent person. He's 22 years old, right? Like he's somebody that you're going to have as a staple on your team for years to come.
Yeah, I like that pick, especially like if it's a tight end premium league, then even more. So I think that's a great spot. I could see him sneaking into the back of the first round and like non-super flex tight end premium leagues by the end of next year, by the start of next season. So
And for
I
that
think you're ahead.
roster too, taking
Oh
Tyreek there, I
yeah.
want a young guy, right? Like with that next
Hmm.
pick. And I feel like that if you're going position by position outside of quarterback, he is by far the most talented probably guy, at his position.
Hmm. Yeah, I similar mindset with my next pick here. Another guy that's had a bit of a rough year, but I think it's mostly been to the stuff going on around him. That's Breece Hall. So we're going to pair him with Chris Olave here, coming out of the 10th spot. Got two guys that should compete and put up numbers next year, and they're also both young enough that you can build around them long term. I would love to come away with this team from the 10th spot after 2 rounds here.
Absolutely. So mine is going to be kind of a risky pick, but man, like the upside of having Garrett Wilson with this guy is give me Devin A-Chain in a McDaniel's
That's a fun one.
offense. And he, obviously he's not going to have the numbers that he did this year, but he is in the perfect system to just be a fantasy freak, because if anybody understands how to use an explosive player like that, it's McDaniels. And what I really love about him is just Miami's blueprint, right? Like they have 2 speed receivers that stretch a defense out, and then they like to run to the outside with speed. Well, A-Chain is the speed guy. Who knows how much longer Mostert is going to kind of have the stranglehold, and if, say, A-Chain in the next 2 years ends up getting 75% of the carries, this could be an absolute steal.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good pick there. Yeah, that's great. Rising offense. There's no reason it's not going to be just as explosive next year. That's a good pick. I could see him challenging Breece Hall in a few drafts next year for sure. Let's see. So coming from the 8th spot, we had Jalen Waddle in the first round. Who do we want to pair him with here? We're going to go ahead and grab one of the veteran receivers still on the board. We've seen a little bit of a downturn, but he's still top 12 wide receiver. No reason he's not going to be next year, especially if he stays in Buffalo. Stephon Diggs here.
I mean, unquestioned number 1 receiver, right? Like, just Allen's favorite weapon. You have one of the best QBs in the game, and an offense it's very up-tempo. You can't go wrong with that. This, again, is probably a little surprising to people, but I'm going to go with DJ Moore here. And I look at it that he's either going to get Justin Fields, who we've seen his target rate is absurd with, or we're talking about Drake May or Caleb Williams probably being his QB the next year, meaning he's going to be getting a lion's share of the targets, period. And, I mean, really what Moore has done in the last 7-8 games with Justin Fields, and you see what he did in Carolina with really no QBs to speak of for most of those years. DJ Moore's a stud. And I just think that his upside is huge. And, what do we want? Like Dave Eddy says it all the time, volume is king. DJ Moore is somebody who's consistently got volume, and he's probably getting an upgrade at QB. As much as I'm high on Fields, I mean, if you're getting either Drake May or Caleb Williams, he's going to have somebody even better throwing him the football next year.
Yep, I like that pick there. I bought a lot of DJ Moore this offseason, so I've been very encouraged by what we've seen. Yeah, he's big season this year. All right, number 6, we had Bijan in round 1, and this is another one where I feel like I wouldn't do this a lot in real life, but it is something that I did in a couple of leagues this year, and I've liked how it's turned out. Is I'm going to corner the running back position with 2 of the best top players under the age of 25, and we're going to add Travis Etienne here to go with Bijan Robinson. Love the PPR upside there. I don't really feel like I'm missing out on a lot in PPR leagues by having those 2, because I think they're both going to be plus pass catchers in their offenses next year. And you have a stranglehold at one of the toughest positions to have an advantage at throughout the year. So obviously a little bit more risk there. We need to make sure we fill in the rest of that roster with some safer guys there, just since it is a running back position. But yeah, we'll pair Bijan Robinson with Travis Etienne.
Well, if you think that was risky, let's get real crazy. I'm going to go with the guy that I mentioned earlier, who I was high on, and I think that people are going to see he's about to take over the fantasy world, is James Cook. He's in the absolute perfect offense. The Bills are starting to trust him running the ball. Yeah, I would love to have those goal line carries. I think that could eventually come, but even if it doesn't, you just look at his involvement in the passing game since Joe Brady has taken over. It's now 4 games. He's seen 22 targets in those 4. So if you're talking about getting James Cook 5 targets per game, he's had over 200 yards receiving in those 4 games, 2 touchdowns. And he reminded people of something I was screaming from the mountaintops when he came out of the draft. The dude can run. Like, people act like he's just this pass catching back. No, James Cook is very good in between the tackles. Great one cut and go guy. And he is in the perfect system, right? Like, to just potentially kind of take this lion's share. We've been saying forever, if the Bills just had a running back, their offense would be unstoppable. Well, look what's happened the last 4 weeks. I also hope that they keep Joe Brady. And if that's true, James Cook, I think, could end up being a monster the next couple of years.
Yeah, Cowboys fan here, so you don't got to tell me about James Cook. I'm very well aware of that man's talents after last night. That guy single-handedly just dismantled us. It was ridiculous. Yeah, great offense for him. I like that pick a lot here. All right, going here. So we had A.J. Brown in round 1 here. So I'm going to go, where is he? All right, Jordan Addison. We're going to go ahead and grab the rookie from Minnesota. We've seen him put up numbers with and without Justin Jefferson across from him. No matter who comes in, it's going to be an upgrade over Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs next year. Year 2 in that system, he's getting more and more comfortable. I think that, we've talked about, the Miami duo, the Philly duo, Cincinnati duo is like the best wide receiver 1-2 punches. I think it's time that we need to start putting Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison there for this next season, especially. So we got A.J. Brown to go with Jordan Addison. Love having 2 of the top 12 young receivers in the game on this team.
Great call. Having Jamar Chase. Actually, I don't want to give away my hand because hopefully maybe you'll drop and I can get him with my next pick. But I'm going to go ahead and take Kieran Williams here. I love Sean McVay running backs. You look at like what Todd Gurley's done. I mean, freaking Darrell Henderson was fantasy relevant for years. And if you look at what Kieran Williams has done this year, a real true MVP in fantasy football. He's 23 years old, and you just the value of being like these Shanahan, McDaniels, McVay running backs because they're involved in the passing game. And what I really love about him is he's one of the true every down backs. He's out there like 97, 98% of the time. I'm in an offense that I know has other good weapons. I think Stafford's going to come back. Like, I think that, with the way they've been winning down the stretch, I don't see Stafford, hanging up his boots like he maybe had hinted at early in the season. And I just think there's a lot of upside with Kieran Williams, and he makes you good right now. And who knows, right? Like how high his ceiling is if he continues to play the way he has the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's a good pick right there. I unfortunately have 0 shares. I was a bit of a hater. I missed out on that one. I'm chalking that one up as an L. He looks like he's fully legit.
I didn't either. I mean, I was definitely not, but it's hard now with you look at his full body this season. It's like basically every game, I think with the exception of 2, he scored 20 plus points that he's been in PPR leagues. I mean, it seems like it doesn't matter who they're playing. He's going to do really well.
Yeah, I like that pick. And pairing him with Jamar Chase, though, gives you a ton of upside there.
Yep.
All right, so similar thought process to what I did with A.J. Brown, pairing him with Jordan Addison. I'm going to grab my second favorite rookie from this class pair, CeeDee Lamb. Bit of a down game last night, but that's going to be my guy, Zay Flowers here. He has more than exceeded expectations as a rookie. Very excited to see what he does with the full offseason there to go with Lamar. Another year, just get more comfortable in this system. I think that next year, I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of bust into the top 12 wide receivers as kind of that featured focal point in the offense outside of Mark Andrews, kind of like what we've seen happen with a couple other teams this year. So yeah, give me Zay Flowers, a pair of CeeDee Lamb here. Who are you rounding out round 2 with?
This is actually pretty easy for me, and I'm very happy to get him here because, as I discussed, I don't think he's going to be in Cincinnati next year, and there's a good chance he's going to be a number 1 receiver with a significant bump in target rate and targets, and he's got all the talent in the world, and that's T. Higgins. I just love the upside of him in Dynasty right now because I actually think it's better for him to leave Cincinnati from a fantasy perspective because probably whatever team he goes to, he's going to become immediately the de facto number 1 receiver.
Yep. He's a guy that I highlighted a couple weeks ago as my number one offseason buy for Dynasty leagues. That big catch and big game he had last week may kind of dash that a little bit, but for a while, man, like his value was so low across some of the leagues. Like I had him in one league that I was trying to move off him at some point because, I was trying to compete this year and just the offers were so bad. I'm like, well, I guess I'll just hang on to him. Well, what do you know? I had to start him last week. It worked out pretty good hanging on to it, just betting on the talent winning out. So I love that pick here for T. Higgins. So recapping round 2 real quick, we had Jahmyr Gibbs starting us off, followed by his teammate Sam Laporta, and then Breece Hall, Devon Achane, Stephon Diggs, DJ Moore, Travis Etienne, James Cook, the Dallas Cowboys killer, Jordan Addison, Kieran Williams, Zay Flowers, and then we rounded that out with T. Higgins. All right, who are you starting with round 3 with?
So part of this is obviously because we're building a team, right? I've got 2 great wide receivers, both young. I feel good about that. I'm taking the next big thing at QB, and I'm going and taking CJ Stroud here. When you look at what he did in basically a no-win situation, I no longer can make excuses for QBs that, oh, you don't have an offensive line. Oh, you don't have a running game. Oh, you don't have an offensive-minded coach. He basically has excelled despite all of that. And the fact that he's a rookie, I don't think people understand. It's his lack of turnovers too is why I'm so high on him moving forward, because he's putting up these huge numbers, having these 400-yard games, and he never throws interceptions ever. Who knows what this guy's upside is? And I'm looking at he's probably the only QB, exception with one other that I talked about, who is this young, who I feel this good about that I would take a QB this early.
Okay, so question here, and I'm intrigued to see the thought process here. So one quarterback league, obviously, they're not as important as a super flex league. How come you go Stroud over, kind of the perceived elite guys at the top, the Mahomes, the Josh Allens, the Hurts? Is it just the age kind of offset?
It's the age.
Kind of just,
yeah, I mean, I think he's the next great quarterback.
He was top 6 before he went down, something
exactly.
like that.
And he's 23, and he doesn't even right now. Again, he's not even set up with a good running back. Or I like Tank Dell and I like Nico Collins. I don't know if either one of those guys are true number 1 wide receivers. Dalton Schultz is a fine tight end, but it's not they're going to get better weapons around this guy. And better offensive line, they kind of mashed the unit that they have together this year. He's done a really good job. I just think the upside on Stroud is unreal. And with the fact that he's 23 years old, I mean, this is somebody you could have on your roster if this league goes forever for a decade. I can't not pair that. I mean, my first 3 picks, none of them are older than, I think Higgins is 25. So 26. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel pretty good about, I got 3 guys to, not only try to win now, but also I've got a good team moving forward.
So it's funny. You kind of tipped my next pick here. And I wanted to see your thought process because I agree with you. I don't think that's crazy in a 1 quarterback league at all to go CJ Stroud. But me personally, I am a believer in my guy Tank Dell. Outside of Zay Flowers, he was probably the rookie that I was beating the drum the hardest for this offseason.
Has the advantage of Stroud throwing to him, which is obviously a big deal.
Grabbed him in so many 2nd and 3rd round rookie drafts, and just him almost alone has made a couple teams I thought were rebuilders into playoff teams this year. The injury wasn't an ACL, MCL, was a bone. Should heal, should be back ready for the start of the next season. I do think that him and Nico Collins are good enough 1-2 punch to kind of lead the next group or lead the next charge of the Texans generation here. Give me Tank Dell, and then CeeDee Lamb, Zay, and Tank Dell. Whether it's a 3 wide receiver league or we're 2 in a flex, you can't really go wrong building around the wide receiver position in dynasty leagues. You have 3 of the top 20 locked in right now. They're all under the age 25. This is this is the type of team that I draft in real life a lot when I come away. It's just all receivers. So getting these 3 on one team together, I would love doing that.
All right. Again, this is probably going to surprise people, but I'm really high on him. I was this year. He's only 26 years old. It's Michael Pittman. I believe in Anthony Richardson. I believe in the upside. I think the Indy offense is going to be unbelievable next year. You look at what they've done with Gardner Minshew, is not even the kind of quarterback that is built for this offense. And this is no disrespect to Gardner Minshew. He's a great backup. But, I mean, Anthony Richardson, we saw it in the 2.5 weeks when he was a really kind of a raw rookie, right? That was the biggest question was, he didn't have a lot of snaps. He didn't have a lot of experience. He looked amazing. And the one thing that's been consistent is Michael Pittman getting peppered with targets. I think he's like the only wide receiver. Him and I think there's two other that have played every game this season that has at least a 25% target share each week and has seen at least 7+ targets. So to get that guy in the third round, he's only 26. I think there's some real upside with his QB and that offense. I think the Colts offense is going to be very good next year. I like Pittman a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good pick there. I like that one. All right, so going here with our next pick, round 3 is around the spot where I'm okay kind of starting to open it up to quarterback when you're looking at like the elite ones for Dynasty. I do think there's something to be said about having that set it, forget it option here. And I'm going to go, I mean, he's had a down year. He's let people down. I'm going to bet on the talent, the coach, and then bringing in more weapons and Rashee Rice taking another step forward. We're going to go Patrick Mahomes, pair him, go with A.J. Brown and Jordan Addison. There's a lot of weeks that you're going to come away with the number 1 wide receiver and the number 1 quarterback. That's a really good recipe for success in dynasty leagues for sustained success past just one season. So let's break that quarterback seal here for team 4 and add Mahomes to the mix.
Well, if you're going to break that seal, I'm going to kind of come right through with it and give me Josh Allen, who I've already got James Cook on this roster. I like the upside of having both of these guys, especially if Buffalo's offense looks like what it has the last few weeks. I mean, there's plenty to go around. And the one great thing about Buffalo is it looks like right now it's kind of Diggs, Kincaid, Cook, and, obviously Allen are the 4 parts that you want, and everybody else is going to be up and down. But I think those 4 guys for their positions are going to be probably top 5, at worst top 10 guys year in and year out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, Cooks and Allen, getting them together, you pretty much have every rushing touchdown out of that backfield right there, so you can't beat that. All right, here. So going number 6, and this is kind of where, like I said, I don't do it a lot where I build running back in Dynasty. And I'm already starting to kind of feel why, because like right here is a perfect spot to try and add a guy like, Jalen Hurts, if you're a Joe Burrow believer, Lamar. But I don't want to go another round without a wide receiver in a PPR league, especially if, we'll say this is like a start wide receiver, start 3 wide receivers here. So to add a little bit of depth to this team, we're going to go ahead and grab Brandon Ayuk, and we are going to add him to Bijan and Travis Etienne. He's one of the last guys I would say I feel okay going into next season with my wide receiver 1. Did that a lot this year. We've seen the up and down weeks, but overall it's been more good than bad. I think another year in that system with Purdy growing, I think we're going to basically this is a floor for what we're going to see moving forward from him. Give me Brandon Ayuk.
I love that pick because he's another guy that is no guarantee he's going to be back in San Francisco next year. But I can promise you, if he gets signed somewhere else, he will get a much bigger piece of the target pie if he goes there. And not that PFF is everything, but he is consistently like a top 5 graded wide receiver. And I think that the best of Ayuk is yet to come. Shout out to my boy Alan, who does some gambling work for F6P. He's been on the Brandon Ayuk train since the day he was drafted. It kind of didn't look great the first couple of years.
Been up and down for sure.
That talent. I've got such a good team. I can't this is probably not where I would go if I didn't have CMC and DJ Moore, to where I feel like, okay, I got a chance to really win this league in the first year. So I'm going to go ahead and take Jalen Hurts and just be in a position to where I feel like I have one of the best wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks, to start my team.
Yeah. And like I said, it's kind of when you draft, that's part of why I took Bijan over CMC is it just kind of gives me a little bit more flexibility in the team building. But yeah, when you get a guy like Christian McCaffrey, you got to go all in on that. There's no reason to try and worry about 2025 and 2026 when your first pick is Christian McCaffrey. So I think that's a great pick. You're going to have arguably the number 1 running back. Jalen Hurts we've seen the floor this year, even in bad weeks, he's putting up 20 fantasy points.
And I think he's banged up. So I think this may be the floor for, Hurts' fantasy production, at least as long as he's able to run the way he can.
Yep. I agree with that. So yeah, I like that pick though. That makes a lot of sense here. All right. Team 8 here. We started off with Waddle and Diggs. So a good amount of compete now. Good youth to go along with that. So I feel like we can kind of go a lot of different ways here. Let's go ahead and grab, where'd he go? Devonta Smith. same thing as kind of team 2 that I'm building here. I have no problem starting off with 3 wide receivers to build my dynasty team around. Waddle and Devonta Smith can carry me into the next generation while still putting up, high-end wide receiver 2 numbers now. Stephon Diggs is the superstar. Let's go. Love how this team looks right now.
Yeah, I love that pick. Devonta is a guy too that only second year. If it wasn't for AJ Brown, I think he would be a top 5 wide receiver for sure. And who knows? AJ Brown get nicked up or whatever. And again, if we think that like I do that Hurts has been banged up this year and he's not at his best, we could see more of like what we did last year with him basically making 2 top 12 wide receivers, if he's fully healthy. But the next pick, I didn't buy into it, but at this point, I can't deny it. And I just love the upside of getting these 3 guys and their age. Give me Puka of the LA Rams.
Yeah.
I've got now, in my opinion, 2 of the best young receivers in the game. Garrett Wilson scares me obviously a little bit just because it's not the same system-wise, but those last 2 picks, you want to talk about upsides like being in McVay's offense and McDaniels, I love it, and they have elite talent. I mean, the fact that Puka's still been fantasy relevant since Kupp has came back and, got his target share and everything is awesome. And if, say, Kupp retires in the next year or 2 or ends up not with the Rams, like we saw the kind of production Puka could get as the unquestioned number 1 target.
Yeah, that's a great young team right there. That's fantastic. Number 10 here, we got Chris Olave and Breece Hall. I'm going to go with the guy here that still sitting at number 2 in my ranks at his position. Had a little bit of a rough stretch, and I feel like they kind of overcorrected too hard on him, considering he's a rookie tight end. We're going to go back to Buffalo and add Dalton Kincaid to this group right here. Love the fact that we have one of the top young players at every single position except for quarterback right now. A lot of different ways you can build the rest of the draft when you have a very balanced even team like this. We've seen the floor this year. It's going to be better next year too, playing in that offense. So yeah, we'll go Dalton Kincaid to go with Chris Olave and Breece Hall.
So I know a lot of people are going to call me a homer for this pick, and I don't care. I'm going Drake London. I don't think people realize how rough it's been for poor Drake to start his career. He's had Marcus Mariota, Taylor Heineke, and Desmond Ridder throwing him passes. There will be an upgrade at QB. If it ends up being Justin Fields, who, by the way, is one of the better deep ball throwers in the NFL, just go back and watch the game versus Tampa and see the 330-plus yard receptions that London made, which were all, by the way, not good throws. And he made unbelievable up-in-the-air, high-point catches. I'm a big believer in London. I was coming out of college, and I think that him being able to do what he's done and the mess that has been the last 2 years in Atlanta, I think he has tremendous upside. And again, if he gets Fields, like look out, that would be the absolute perfect QB for somebody like Drake London, who is somebody that's a lot of yards per reception type receiver.
Yeah, I mean, Drake London's been one of the few guys that's remained like somewhat steady throughout all this right here. Just kind of goes to showcase how much of a talent he is here. All right, rounding out round 3 here. I am torn between a few guys here. Looking at who we have so far, we got Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs. So I think based off of that, I'm going to continue to kind of build on the younger side. Was really looking at DK Metcalf here, but I'm going to go with the younger teammate that I think takes a big step forward next year, and that's going to be his teammate, JSN, if it will let me copy and paste him. There we go. All right, so then here, quick recap on round 3. Here's where we sit. We had CJ Stroud to start it off, followed by Tank Dell, Michael Pittman, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith, Puka Nacua, Dalton Kincaid, Drake London, and then I rounded it out with Jackson Smith and Jigba. So we're going to get through one more round today. We'll go through round 4, and then we'll stop here. So going with this team here, I like how it is set up. Want a little bit more at the receiver position, I think, based off of how I'm sitting there, or at least one more pass catcher, I should say. So we're going to go ahead and move back to Detroit, and we're going to grab TJ Hawkinson, get one of those top 3 tight ends to go with this group here. And yeah, I like that.
I do too. This is where it gets kind of tough. I'm gonna go ahead and go Rashee Rice here. I just it looks like he's becoming the guy. I mean, you talked about how you can't pass up on Mahomes. He has been yard per route run. It's over 30% now for a 6-week stretch. And the only issue with Rice early in the season was, well, how many, times was he going to be on the field? How many routes was he going to run? That doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. And what I love about this team is I have obviously Tyreek Hill, who I know is an older player, but now I have 2 young studs at receiver and arguably the best, tight end in the game outside of Travis Kelce.
Yep, that's a great pick there. This was an easy one for me. This team is built similar to that last one I was drafting here. I was debating DK Metcalf, went with JSN. We'll go ahead and grab DK Metcalf, add him to Chris Olave, Breece Hall, Dr. Kincaid. Love how that team stacks up there. A lot of upside. All right, moving on. Who you got for Team 9?
All right, you ready for me to get everybody upset? I'll go ahead and do this now. Give me Brock Purdy, who I don't understand it. I don't get it. He should be above any quarterback not named Mahomes, Allen, or Stroud in dynasty leagues. I don't understand it. We're now at over a season-long sample size. I think he's had 1 game that he hasn't thrown multiple touchdowns. Everybody but Ayuk is signed for at least 3 more years. George Kittle is the oldest weapon. He's 30 years old. You're in a Shanahan offense. And I just need to remind people, Matt Ryan, who I love, Matt Ryan's my boy, he was an MVP in his second year in the Shanahan offense. This is the second year for Brock Purdy, not even a full second year. This is his year and a half in the Shanahan offense. He's a much better down-the-field passer than Matt Ryan is. His deep ball numbers are absurd. And I just think that, the sky's the limit. He's 23 years old. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be in San Francisco, which is one of the best ran organizations in football. He's got Shanahan, who in my opinion is the best offensive mind in football. And by the way, he's definitely got CMC, Debo, and Kittle for the next 3 years. I don't think it's even close. To me, Purdy definitely should be right there. There's only basically 3 QBs I want over. Hurts I love, but he's just who knows how long Hurts is going to be able to be Hurts. Same thing with Lamar, who, again, I love both of those QBs, where Purdy is a traditional QB. They last longer. To me, it's just it's Allen, Mahomes, and Stroud, and then I have Purdy 4.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad pick by any means there. It is tough. I'm gonna take one of the other quarterbacks that you mentioned here, and it is a guy that is number 5 in my rankings, and that is Lamar. I love kind of what we've seen this year, where he's almost running at 80% out there. It looks like you can tell he's prioritizing being smart and staying healthy over just going out there and getting every single yard that's out there. He's doing a great job of extending plays. He's throwing the ball away. I think that this version of Lamar Jackson with Todd Monken is kind of what we can expect moving forward for the rest of his career. He's still younger than a lot of people realize. I think he's 26 years old still. So yeah, give me Lamar Jackson here. Tons of upside, clear down in round 4.
Yeah, and so with this next team, again, looking at this roster, I like the way it's built to win now, but it still has some upside with more. So let's go ahead and build for the future and build for now, and give me Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh, he's so good, man. That's a great pick.
It's his target rate and stuff is what I like. He's basically a top 20 receiver. If you look at his targets per route run and his, receptions and his total targets and everything. And I just I love adding him to what is already a pretty good roster. What's up, Wendy?
That's a good pick, man. Hey, what's up, Wendy? How are you doing today? Never too early for draft season, right? All right, let's see here. So team 6, we have Bijan, Travis Etienne, and Brandon Ayuk. So they can use a quarterback here. Couldn't go wrong adding another wide receiver, tight end. Let's get into the tough part of the draft here where you're kind of starting to have to pick some of your guys. I'm going to bet on a guy who's still very young, been battling injuries this year. And it is a bit scary that these injuries have kind of been similar abdominal area. But he was the guy that was, late first, early second pick at the start of draft season last year. We're going to go Kenneth Walker up in Seattle. Go ahead and add him to this team with Bijan, Travis Etienne, and Brandon Ayuk. And we are going to take a strong stranglehold on the running back position right there. It's getting pretty thin at that position. not only do you have 3 of them that should be top 12 when they're healthy, you have a great trade chip and you've cornered the market on one of the tougher positions, which is one of the things I don't mind doing if a draft does fall this way, where I end up with 2 good running backs right away. I'm not afraid to add a couple more.
All right. Again, this is a risky pick, but I like the upside of this guy. And I potentially could have 2 running backs that are top 10 backs for the next 4 or 5 years on this roster. And I already know I have a great QB and a great wide receiver. Give me Tajee Spears of the Tennessee Titans. I watched that guy at the Senior Bowl last year, and literally our jaws dropped. Like, it was unbelievable the plays he was making on a regular basis. I think it's safe to say that the miles on Derrick Henry are getting near the end. From what I've heard, Mike Vrabel's job is safe. So you're going to have potentially, if not next year, in the next 2 years, the unquestioned number 1 back in an offense that loves to pound the ball with a young quarterback who's shown some promise in Will Levis, a wide receiver, and DeAndre Hopkins. I really like the upside of Spears a lot moving forward. I believe in his talent, and especially in a PPR league where I think he's going to feast once he's a featured back.
That's a great pick. I love Tajee Spears. And again, if this was a real draft and I was team 4 right now, I would have been slamming the table when Kenneth Walker went at pick 6 there, because that would have been a great addition here. So with that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and corner another one. Kind of similar thoughts with Patrick Mahomes. Let's go get one of the top guys at the position. Buying a little bit of the injury discount right now. We're going to go get Mark Andrews. Love having A.J. Brown, Mahomes, and Mark Andrews. Top 3 guys at their position most weeks if they're healthy. Jordan Addison, I think he takes a big step forward. Yeah, this team's set up very nicely.
All right, this is kind of a pick because, again, I think there's a considerable drop-off after this guy at the QB position.
We did, Wendy. I had a great run in this league, too, and then I got knocked out in round 1 of the playoffs this
So
week.
where was this at?
This was at the Expo. The winner gets
cool.
a signed jersey. I think it was like Travis Etienne or a Javonte Williams jersey. And I had the 3 seed, and I got knocked out. I actually think Wendy had a bye. I think she was the number 2 seed in this league. But, yeah, it was a good one.
Great minds think alike, sit next to each other. But give me Herbert. I like the upside of he's getting away from Brandon Staley. Who knows? Maybe Bill Belichick is the next coach for the Los Angeles Chargers. I actually think it would make a lot of sense for both Herbert, that he would have somebody that would actually coach the rest of the team well. It makes sense for the Chargers in the sense that they need to find an identity in LA to get people to give a crap about the team. And I think Belichick could do that. But I think, really what Herbert has done is pretty phenomenal, with really not a great roster around him. And I just think that, eventually things are going to get right. And he's so young and so talented. I like having that quarterback to add with those 2 receivers and running back.
Yeah, that head coaching job is going to be a very attractive job this offseason to be able to go in there and pair up with Herbert. So, yeah, I think better days are ahead for him here. Man, with this team here, this is definitely one of those that comes down to team building philosophy. If through 3 rounds I had a team or like kind of team 7, Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Jalen Hurts, I think I would go Joe Burrow here. But considering I got, CD, Zay, and Tank Dell, I think I'm going to try and go with a little bit more upside here at the quarterback position. I'm going to buy that injury discount, and we're going to go grab Anthony Richardson. Love him as a year 2 breakout. I mean, there's a real chance, you could have top 12 receivers and a top 2 quarterback if Anthony Richardson stays healthy for an entire season for fantasy. So I love this. So go ahead and end us out here for round 4. Who was the last pick of round 4?
Man, again, this is more of a pick because of what I have here than anything. And this is obviously going to be a team that's going to probably be, we're just going to pick up running backs where we can. So I'm going to pick up one of the guys that I think is kind of surpassed Christian Watson as the guy you want in Green Bay.
Yes.
Give me discount Deebo Samuel, Jaden Reed. I love the upside of him both running and catching passes, and just dude looks elite. I mean, it's rare that somebody scores this many weeks in a row, and he has. And I like him in the LaFleur offense. LaFleur, again, studied under Shanahan. I think we're only seeing them scratch the surface of the way they're going to use Jaden Reed, which is good for, obviously, fantasy users.
Oh, I like it. All right, quick recap of round 4 here. We started off with TJ Hawkinson, followed up by Rashee Rice, DK Metcalf, Brock Purdy, Lamar Jackson, Trey McBride, Kenneth Walker, Tajay Spears, Mark Andrews, Justin Herbert, Anthony Richardson, and then Jaden Reed. This was definitely the round where I feel like you kind of started to see a little bit more out there picks just in terms of like, okay, now we're starting to kind of look at roster construction. Oh, do I take this guy that's here? Well, no, I already got a couple of guys at that position. So you kind of start to see it get a little bit crazier here. So looking at it right here, putting you on the spot, who is your favorite of these 12 teams through 4 rounds? Like if you have to pick one of these teams,
without a doubt,
we'll say out of all of them. Open it up to both.
I do really like your team too. I love that Lamb, Flowers, Dell, Richardson, but I do if it's a dynasty league, like what we're doing, it's hard to not go with 9. Or you have Garrett Wilson, Devon Achane, Puka, and Brock Purdy, where you could potentially have the best wide receiver, running back, and quarterback in 2-3 years in football.
Yeah, 2 is really good. I like 9. Let's see what other teams here. Team 7's a great win now team. If you can stomach living on the edge, that Bijan, Etienne, Kenneth Walker could be pretty fun to go into next season with.
I also really like the Mahomes, Andrews, Addison Brown. That was the other now, one. Win later, potential both. You're going to compete now, and you got a chance to, obviously got some really solid picks down the road. I'm not going to lie though. Also, I do kind of like the Chase, Williams, Pittman, Herbert team. that's another one that it's both built for now and potentially. You got Williams 23. I think Chase 24. Herbert's 24, 25. And even Pittman's 26, which, these receivers seem to play a lot longer than they used to.
Pittman has been awesome this year, too.
And I'm so high on Richardson. I just love that pick. That's the main reason the only thing that scares me about the 2 is will Dell obviously be the same player recovering from injury, but I'm really high on Flowers because with Lamar, obviously Lamb is a can't miss. And man, if Dell comes back and his way was last year and Richardson is what I think he's going to be, who was my favorite QB in this class. Obviously I was wrong because that answer was CJ Stroud, but I still really believe in Richardson, especially for fantasy because of his running capability. And he's a really good thrower of the football.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Keith, man, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. We wrapped up in about an hour. That's about what we were aiming for. Don't know if you're free next Monday, but I'm thinking we either hop back on and finish this out, or maybe we finish it during the week and I'll come back on and kind of talk about how all the teams ended up for next week. But yeah, it's never too early to start looking at 2024. This gives you a really good idea of kind of how some of it's going to shake out. Obviously, no rookies are added to this, so there could be some major shakeups. But this is kind of a good test of, who are the top 50 players heading into the offseason as it stands right now in terms of veterans.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Well, tell the people where they can find you at.
You can find me at Keith Flemming on Twitter/X. We have a DFS show on Fantasy Six Pack every Thursday with me and my boy Joe Matz. We have been on absolute fire with our plays lately. I have 2 articles that come out each week on Fantasy Six Pack. One is a DFS values. The other is a DFS stacks, even though last week I actually did just a Saturday slate article because we had the 3 games. And then every Wednesday I go on ESPN Northwest Florida for about 40 minutes. During this time of year, we cover DFS football. And then once football season ends, we roll right into DFS golf.
Yeah, staying busy over there. I love it. Same here. All my work you can find either on Twitter or at Fantasy Six Pack. This morning posted the Week 15 written fantasy recap. Pretty sad. Next week is the last week that we will be doing that article since, Week 17, most people are either going to be celebrating a championship or too mad to look at their team to care about fantasy football at that point. So
good time to start doing DFS though, man. Because we go all the way through the Super Bowl.
That goes all the way through the Super Bowl. Yep. So make sure you tune in for that. We'll be on the Sunday social, I believe, for Week 16 and 17. So catch me Sunday mornings there the next 2 weeks. One more written recap, and then from there we are moving into the off season where we'll still have this weekly Dynasty show. We may move it to Sundays once the football games end, just since we're hanging out and not watching games, but we'll keep it on Monday for now for the next few weeks. So yeah, make sure you follow us there. Head over to fantasysixpack.net/plans to become members. Come hang out with us in the Discord, so that way you don't got to wait till Mondays when we're live to come hang out with us. And then make sure you guys hit like and subscribe so you guys can catch part 2 of this mock draft next Monday. All right, thanks again, Keith.